Hello, I'm doing my video today on James P. Byrd's book, Sacred Scripture, Sacred War, specifically Chapter 2, Lord is a Man of War. This book is about how pastors, preachers, and founders use biblical text before, during, and after the Revolutionary War to explain who we are as a people, to justify acts of war, and to show where this country is going to go. The chapter itself is broken up into 5 subsets. One's about comparing Pharaoh to King George, us to the new Israelites. The next is called the Holy Man of War. It's justifying acts of war and showing that God is a God of war. The third is, it's a fight, it doesn't really fit, it's a fight back against the hypocrisy of slavery in comparing Great Britain to Egypt while we have slaves in America. The next is Americans' Moses, referring to George Washington, and then finally we have Moses' Constitution in the New America. Throughout this chapter, he uses references from preachers and pastors and different quotes from founders to show how these people were using these texts to push forward a fight against the British. And it's not just one sect of Christianity. It's Presbyterians, it's Congregationalists, it's Baptists, it's also Roman Catholics. He quotes all of these. And throughout his book, he does it throughout the country, but this chapter is mostly focused on New England. There's quotes from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. The most come from that area. So we see really great imagery in some of these sermons, especially there's one by Elisha Fitch, and I just want to read one of his outtakes from his sermon to give you an idea of what he's talking about. The British have aroused the Negroes to cut our throats and set the savages and Roman Catholics like bloodhounds on our backs, while they, like lions, come to meet us with open mouths, gaping for their prey, most furiously and maliciously gnashing upon us with their teeth, filled with rage and indignation, threatening to devour us at a mouthful. The imagery from that, I think, is amazing. I think it's very powerful, and it would have had a powerful impact upon the congregations and people listening at the time. We also see sermon titles by people like Jacob Cushing called Murderous War and Rape Inhumanely Perpetuated by 2 Brigades of British Troops. There's another by Jonas Clark from A Year After Lexington called Fate of a Bloodthirsty Oppressor and God's Tender Care for His Distressed People. There's always a reference throughout this chapter that we are God's chosen people. And we see this a lot later in the chapter as it goes through who's going to be our Moses, and it kind of goes, well, George Washington's going to be our Moses. And Ezra Stiles, the president of Yale, says, "O Washington, how I love thy name, how I bless and adore thy God for giving and creating you as a great human ornament of mankind." So we can kind of see this love and admiration, almost godlike attribute of Washington. There's some pushback against this, but really after his death, there's no going back. He's our Moses. And in the last part, Moses' Constitution in the New America, it kind of goes to where God gave Moses laws, and now his laws were supposed to guide the country. Now, God has given us a whole new country. Therefore, we have to make this Constitution our 10 Commandments, our laws. It kind of shows the correlation between Moses and Washington, between America and Israel throughout this chapter, and through King George and Pharaoh. The imagery is fantastic. The sermon titles and the context of them were all fascinating. And there's a lot more to this chapter that I wasn't able to get to, but if anybody has extra time, I would highly suggest it.